Let me show you how Xenett can help you automate your deferred revenue entries. Xenett can automatically make your revenue recognition entries. It can also create the schedule for your deferred revenue account. And then it will also make sure that the balance as per schedule and your GL balance will stay in sync. To get started, the very first thing that you will have to do is to add that task or review point. For that, just simply click on new, click on task or review point, and then here just say defer revenue. Select that particular defer revenue review point and just add it to your close process. Once that review point is added, in my case, I have already added that. But if you are like creating it for the very first time, then it will ask you some configuration. So let me show you. When you click on config, it will first ask you when exactly do you want Xenett to automate your entries. So you have to define the date. So what this would do is that any entries which is done after this date, Xenett will then only do the automation for those entries. So this is very, very important date, right? Second thing is the threshold amount. Now, what Xenett is going to do is that, let's just say if this amount is 2000 that you set, anything below that $2,000, Xenett will not consider it for the purpose of deferred revenue. It will ignore it, right? So you have to just set up that threshold amount. And then you have to map the accounts like, okay, what is that account on your balance sheet that you would like to use it for deferred revenue account? And similarly, you also need to map the accrued revenue account. I'll actually explain both of these later in this video, but it's very important for you to map these accounts in order to get started. Now let me take you inside the QuickBooks file to show you how the whole automation works. So I'm actually creating an invoice and say I selected the, let's just say I selected the proper customer. Here I am selecting my revenue item, so it's services. Now, the very first thing which is very, very important is this line level description. And then there's this like internal customer notes, which is the transaction level memo. Here you have to just specify the period, right? So let's just say for this particular customer, I'm providing them the services, which is for the whole year. So I'm going to say from 1/1/2026 to December 31st, 2026, right? The way you write this period is very, very important. You have to specify in this format, which is from, and then the start date, then to, and then the end date. That's one way how you can specify the memo, the period. The second way is you can just type in for the period where you, and then you write the start date and then to, and then the end date. It's pretty straightforward, right? So that's number one. Now there are two memos here. One is line level and the second is the transaction level. So we have this field internal customer notes. Let me show you how this works. If you actually, let's just say if there are multiple line items and multiple services that you are providing it to your customers, if you just type in that period here, what this would do, it would then use the same period, apply it to all the different line items, and it would then recognize all of your income based on this memo. Okay, so that's like that's how Xenett prioritize the period. The second thing is this line level memo, right? Now, what this would mean is that just in case if you have different services for the different period, then you should mention it at line level description, and that is how Xenett will recognize the revenue. So that is very, very important. The next important field is this amount. And this is where the threshold amount that we have set is important. In this configuration that I have just said, I set this threshold amount as $2,000, which means that if I'm typing $1,900, which is less than the threshold amount, Xenett will ignore this for the deferred revenue automation. If it was $2,100, which is more than $2,000, then it will consider it for the deferred revenue automation. Now, this was for invoice transaction, but it would also work the same way for sales receipt, deposit, and journal entries. Once the transaction is saved, after a few seconds to probably a minute or two, Xenett will then receive this information. It would then activate the deferred revenue automation, and then it would create the schedule. It would also make all these expense recognition entries in your QuickBooks file. Now let me show you how Xenett actually makes the revenue recognition entries. So if you remember, in configuration, we have a default deferred revenue account. So whatever the deferred revenue portion is, which is actually recorded to this account, which is selected. About the revenue account, whatever revenue account is linked with this line item, it would actually post the revenue portion to that account. Now, just in case, if you have a different revenue categories, and for each of those categories, let's just say if you have a separate deferred revenue account, then you can also set up the mapping for that. To do that, in configuration, you will see add another account. And this is where you can set up the mapping, where for each of those revenue accounts, you would be able to set the corresponding deferred revenue account as well. All right, now let me talk about the accrued revenue account and what is the use of that. So to give you an example here, these particular services are actually for the period which is January to December. However, the invoice date is, let's just say it's 1st of May. Okay. What this would do, what this actually means is that for the period January to April, it's not actually a deferred revenue, but it is actually a accrued revenue, right? So for that period, it would use it would use the accrued revenue account. But for the period, which is from May to rest of the year, which is December, it would then put it to the deferred revenue. All right, now let me show you how the schedule looks like once all these entries are done. So here in Xenett, you will see that in deferred revenue review point, where you can see this schedule, it displays the name of the customer, the date of the invoice, reference number of invoice, all the information about that invoice, the amount, the period. Here you can see what is the amount which is recognized for the period which you are closing, what is the remaining balance, and what is the ending balance. At the bottom, you can see that it has calculated the closing balance as per schedule. It has then compared the same balance with your GL balance, and then it has calculated the difference as well. Now, in case if you would like to see all these entries done by Xenett for each of the schedule that you see, when you click on this icon, it would then show you like, okay, what is the source transaction and the reversal entry for that source transaction, and then all these revenue recognition entries done by Xenett. In case if you would like to export anything into Excel, we have an option here for export Excel. In case if you would like to set up or change any configuration, you can also do it from here. Now let me talk about how you can actually bring your existing deferred revenue schedule inside Xenett. To bring your existing deferred revenue schedule, you click on Add Schedule. Here you type in whatever the original invoice date was. Let's just say it was 1st of January. You select the customer. Here you select your revenue account, the invoice amount. This is most important, the start date and the end date. This is where you type in the from and to date. So let's just say it was for the whole year. So I'm going to type in 12/31st, 2026. The location and the class information is optional. And then you click on Prepare Schedule. When you click on it, it would actually create the schedule for you. Now, this is where it's very, very important decision that you have to kind of make here. Xenett has created this schedule, but it does not know how many of these entries are already done and how many of those entries are actually yet to be done. So in this case, as it says, select the entries not yet recorded in your accounting software, which means that right now I'm in May, which means that I have already done the entries for January, February, March, and April. And now I want Xenett to start making entries from the month of May. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select those entries which I want Xenett to make it for me. And then when you click on Add Schedule, what it would do, it would actually create this schedule. It would make all of these entries, and then it would actually automatically match your existing deferred revenue GL balance with the schedule balance.